And then, Miss Clay, you're a consultant, correct?
I am.
Oh, can you hear me? I can't hear you now.
I can hear you.
Oh no, what happened?
Hold on.
I had you the first time.
Yeah, hold on. Speaker. Hold on.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you now. Hello?
I may
Hello?
have. Can you hear me now?
Oh, what happened?
Can you hear me?
Excuse me. Hello?
I can hear you.
I'm so sorry, Miss Clay.
Oh, good.
New COVID cases. And between late June and mid-August, numbers.
Sorry about that. Okay, I got it now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay. Testing real quick.
Testing. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
I'm so sorry. I can't hear you now.
Oh, no.
All right, what about now? Okay, there we go. We're good.
You can hear me?
Yep, there we go. Perfect.
Cool.
Yep, and so you're a consultant in like the DMV area?
I am.
Right, yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do things all across, honestly, the world now, but I'm based locally in the DMV area.
Which part?
Oh, I'm sorry, Maryland, Upper Marlboro.
Okay, how long you been there?
I've been in Maryland for 20 years now, 21 years.
Okay.
I'm originally from North Carolina, but.
Okay, what school you go to?
College. So I started out at Howard, and then I went to North Carolina Central.
Okay, cool. So you went to that's not an HBCU, right? Yeah, I was about to say that is HBCU. I was about to say, yeah, that's HBCU.
Yep, wouldn't have made any other choice, honestly.
Cool. And then you lived in Maryland?
Yeah. So after I graduated from college, I moved up here. Been here ever since.
You ever been to Virginia?
Have I ever been to Virginia? Yeah.
Duh, right? Like,
no. Yeah. So my hometown is actually about maybe 30 minutes from the Virginia line, North Carolina. So it's like 30 minutes north. And so I was always in Southern Virginia growing up. And then, of course, Northern Virginia is just right over the bridge now from me. It's about maybe, again, 30 minutes away.
From Elizabeth City?
So I grew up in Ahoskie, North Carolina, which is about maybe 45 minutes from Elizabeth City. A lot of the people I went to high school with went there.
Yeah, I went to Norfolk State.
Get out of here. My sister did too. Behold the green and gold.
Yeah, I'm the president of my chapter in Detroit.
Dope.
Yeah. I'm one of the board of directors.
Oh.
That's yeah, I'm just saying that doesn't really mean anything right now. I got to do a lot more.
Yes, my sister loves. She
All
loves.
Right. All right, Miss Clay, then we family.
Right.
Bet. All right, let's get it done. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Simple Podcast. We focus on providing simple solutions in the classroom. I have a sister from another Mr. Ayesis Clay. She is a educational consultant in the DMV metropolitan area, preferably Maryland. Which part of Maryland again? You said?
Marlboro.
Okay, cool. So that's where that's about Largo, right?
Yeah, it's not too far from Largo.
Right, and that's where the Gladys Knight's Chicken and Waffles is at. And so that's where that's where the Magic Johnson's Theater is at as well, right?
Yeah. I don't think we have. I think that restaurant closed, unfortunately. But yeah, that's
I know it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. How you doing today?
I'm good, good. I cannot complain, man. I cannot. I mean, I
Yeah.
could, but I mean, for what?
So you're like really like super eclectic, huh? So you from, excuse me, North Carolina and went to Howard, went to
Yeah,
two HBCUs. So I definitely want to talk about that.
yeah.
So definitely I definitely know you love your people, but you seem like you're definitely winning right now. We definitely want to hear how you're winning with education, and just like what is some tips you want to give teachers, but just before you do that, just like how was your summer? How you doing today?
Yeah, my summer was great. It was busy, but busy in a good way. It was busy in a good way. I'm not in the classroom anymore. Daily, I used to be a classroom teacher for 17 years. But as you said, I'm an educational consultant now. So my summer was pretty busy. Um, but good. I'm feeling great today. I mean, it's warm. It's a beautiful day in Maryland. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. The weather there is very impeccable. It gets really hot, but it gets really cold. But the
Yeah.
summers are pretty beautiful, and there's a lot of trees and stuff. And so the DMV area I always recommend. But one of my friends, my coworkers, actually got a new job in DC, and I told him that don't get lost in DC, man, because it's a lot of people, you know. And I said this, I felt kind of bad because because this is my experience, So I'm really from New Orleans, so
Okay.
we cultured up, gumbo. I can tell you, you fake from a mile away, right? And so I
Mhm.
get to, the DMV, and people loving me, but it's so many different people, and it's so many opportunities. It's cutthroat. I feel it's very preppy. What I mean, as far as like it's a bubble. I feel for like some people, and I learned that from living there and going to Norfolk State and just seeing that whole dynamic and how that was completely different despite it being so close. And I told him, man, don't get lost in DC, but you in Maryland, so you humbled, right?
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy because, like you said, I'm from North Carolina, a really, really small town in North Carolina called Ahoskie, right? And so it's very rural. And
Yeah,
when I went to college at Howard, one of the things that, I mean, I always wanted to go to Howard. Howard was my dream school.
yeah.
And so I got there and it was just loud. I remember it being loud. Like,
Mm,
I'm used to crickets and falling asleep to crickets, and falling asleep to city sounds was a challenge to say the least. And my experience with the area is a little different. So when I first got up here to Howard, it was the New York people who seemed really kind of like
mhm,
standoffish. And here I
mhm.
am from North Carolina saying, hey to everybody walking on campus. And they're looking at me like, I don't know you. Do I know you? But so that was a challenge. But I love the area. It's a lot of culture, a lot of different things. Of course, we got some gentrification going on right now.
A
I
lot.
feel like that's a lot of these big cities. Unfortunately, Chocolate City is not so chocolate anymore.
And that's my issue. That's my entire issue.
Mhm.
Like for once it was called Chocolate City, right? And I came from a chocolate city in New Orleans, and I could compare and contrast. I'm like, yeah, where are the black people at? Like I'm in Falls Church, Virginia. I'm like, where are the black people at? Dang.
In Falls Church, that's why. Don't be looking for black people in Falls Church.
I know. But it was one of the best educational systems, though. I didn't know
Mhm.
that, right? I
Mhm.
had a really great education,
Yeah.
and so I definitely benefited from that. And my uncle always telling me, like, you benefited from Katrina. He an OG, so he can say that. I would never say that, but he like you benefited Katrina because you was able to go from Louisiana to Virginia, which is a really great economy in general. But enough about Virginia. So great you having you back in it 17 years, so OG, triple OG, what's some tips you'll give to some teachers coming back into schooling during COVID and everything else going on.
Yes. So a tip, honestly, that I would give is rooted a lot in my journey. Right now, as an educational consultant, I do a lot of work with teacher mental wellness. And because of my journey in mental wellness. And so my descent into non-wellness, and then, you know, my clawing my way back up. So one of my biggest tips, and I say this, and I say it in my professional developments, and sometimes principals give me the eye, but I'm like, you come first. So the conversation is always students first, right? Always. I don't care what district I work with, the conversation is always the students come first. And I understand the meaning behind that. And yes, that's who we serve. Absolutely. Absolutely. However, if we are not well, if we are not, if we don't have very clear boundaries, and we don't have systems in place to care for ourselves through the challenges of education, then the children are going to suffer. So then therefore, our mental wellness is first. So a very simple tip that I would give, very simple, is finding 30 seconds to a minute every time before a new class for yourself. And what that can look like is mindfulness. I'm big in mindfulness. And we can talk about that later, but taking a moment to just literally sit in your chair and breathe and counting your breaths. Breathe in on a 4, out on a 4, and just grounding yourself before students come in, and literally do this before you see any student. And so a lot of times teachers are like, you know, I don't have time. And I get that. But 30 seconds to a minute in order to make sure that you are in a stable place is not a lot to ask. It's a very small ask. So there's that. Take care of you first, whatever that looks like. Again, a lot of the professional development work that I do is around helping teachers create personalized systems for themselves, but then going a step further and helping the school create systemic systems to help their teachers in the space. Because we can do all the personal development work that in the world, you know what I'm saying? But if we are in a broken system, then we're going to end up starting to chip away at that work we're doing. And so there's that. So any kind of personal teacher, to teachers, I say, you come first. You have to. You cannot buy into the student comes first, and therefore we give until we don't have anything left. You come first so that we can make sure the kids are well.
Yeah, I think the dilemma with that is that, you know, people just don't feel that the job feels like the system puts the job first, right? And so people, you know, they're like, why would I put myself first when they don't even treat me like I'm first, right? They treat me like I am, you know.
And that's why you should. And
Right.
that is absolutely why you should. Because if you don't value yourself and the work that you do, then they, of course, are not. And so one of the things, and I like to make sure that teachers know that it's not like, I was having a conversation with a teacher recently, and they were saying how this self-care movement, and I'm using air quotes here, this self-care movement with teachers feels very much like victim shaming. No, it feels like victim shaming. It's like, you know, oh, well, if you would just take care of yourself, then, everything will right itself. That's not the case. You know, clearly there are systemic things that need to be in place. But what I find with a lot of the teachers that I work with is that they are so passionate about teaching. They are so passionate about their young people. They're so passionate about what they teach, right?
Yeah.
They forget and they put themselves at the bottom of the list. And that's when it becomes problematic. That's honestly the well that I fell down, is that, you know, the kids needed so much, and I felt like I was the only one to do it. And so I burnt myself all the way out.
Yeah. And and our job, man, I think the compensation would just really help with a lot of the mental stuff, because we are superheroes, you know, with capes, and we are doing so many things. And I see your face. But what I mean by that is that, teachers are very equipped people, and they have a lot of skills that are needed, are necessary, right? So knowing how to read, knowing how to speak, knowing how to public speak, knowing how to be organized, knowing how to manage things, right? Those skills are leadership skills that are needed. So that's what I mean by that. And so, but we don't get the compensation. And so I feel like that is the issue. But yeah, go ahead real quick, and then we can get into like your childhood. Yeah, why'd you make that face?
Because I push back on that superhero label so hard. That is a soapbox that is a hill that I'm willing to die on. We are heroes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Teachers are educators, are heroes, absolutely. But I push back on this superhero mentality, the superhero trope, because there's this, with superheroes comes this sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Think about all the superheroes that you know, right? They sacrifice everything for everybody but themselves, right? They put their bodies, their mental, and literally everything on the line for others to their own detriment. And I think that when we take on that mantle of superhero, we're subconsciously telling ourselves that we have to give, because if not us, then who? Right? No. It can't be that. We're heroes. We do heroic things every day. We move mountains for children. We move mountains for educational systems. But there can't be that thing of putting everything above our own well-being and our own. And this isn't just for teachers. This is for school leaders, because I've seen so many school leaders burn all the way out and then become ineffective. So that's why I made that like, superhero. No,
respect. And then real quick before we get into your childhood, because this is a really good conversation. So real briefly, so what's the hierarchy, right? So if you say teachers are centered, right? Where do the parents, where do the community, where do the kids fit in that? And where do admin fit in that?
That is an amazing question. So when I say that the teachers come first, I mean that on their levels, right? And so when we talk about, let's back up a little bit. When we talk about students first, again, we all know that we are here to serve students, which then serves the community, right? That is the hierarchy of what we do. We serve students in order to serve the community. They go out and they become amazing people, amazing, citizens. Okay.
Right.
When I say teachers need to come first, that's really on a situation, that's really what I'm talking about, is for teachers to see themselves not as outside of this, not as the last at the bottom rung, for the educational system to not see teachers as the bottom rung. I say this all the time, and I'm starting to hear it more often with other people, is that when we put adults who are having trouble managing their own wellness, right, in front of children who don't know how to manage their own wellness, their own energy, they don't know how to regulate themselves, right?
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're teaching the next generation of people to not regulate themselves. If you think about it, if I'm deregulated, if I'm not regulated, I don't know how to take care of me and make sure that I am the best teacher that I can possibly be in front of my classroom. What they're getting from me is a teacher who snaps at them, a teacher who isn't completely there with them, a teacher who really doesn't care. Because at that point, I've checked out. I've been that teacher. I've checked out. It's like, you know what, whatever. I'm getting a paycheck. Right? Yeah. So if we don't start thinking about teachers first and their and when I say teachers, I'm using this loosely. I mean the adults in the space, the adults in the school, from school leadership to teachers to the custodial staff to literally everyone. When we're not looking at their mental wellness, what really are we teaching students?
Yeah.
We're always teaching them something, right? They're always learning something from us by observing us, by things that we say to them, things that they hear us say to other people.
Yeah.
What are we teaching them? And so that's what I mean. So when we're talking about a hierarchy, of course, we are all here in order to make sure that we support the student. Parents should be there to support the student. School leadership there to support the student. Teachers there to support the student. There's just that missing piece. You know, we hear all the time about the connection between school and community, home and school. We hear that connection, and there are things in place to kind of help support that. There are programs in place to kind of help bridge that gap. But what I was finding, especially in my 17 years, there weren't any programs to help support teachers. There were programs to make sure that they became better teachers as far as pedagogy.
Right.
But that really didn't cut it.
Yeah, and it might not be a top-down or bottom-up effect. It might be a recursive type thing, right, or a mutual thing. And so that's a great point. You know, the teacher is not well, then the student will just indirectly pick up on those habits and you know, act on them. So absolutely. So where did you get this, like, you know, this what's the word I'm looking for? India Arie, you know, Jill Scott, you know, Erykah Baduism vibe, you know, when you grew up, you know, did you have like an OG grandma that just gave you all these quotables and you just wrote them down and you just repeated them for 17 years and that's how you got your clout, you know what I'm saying?
Oh my gosh, I wish that was the case. That's so funny. No, so I didn't want to be a teacher ever.
Yeah.
Like literally my background is in theater. And
me too, kind of.
Nice. We're gonna talk offline about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, theater. And I went to college for theater. I got my degree in theater. And then when I got out, I needed a job because I had a family. Yeah. And a job with the Maryland Department of Juvenile Services kind of fell into my lap. And I'm like, how am I supposed to be teaching? I don't know how to teach. Matter of fact, I don't want to teach, but I needed a job. And so I used my skills with connection because as an artist, that was strong. Those skills were always strong. Connecting with people, connecting with characters, being empathetic with people. That was always there. And so that was my in education. But unfortunately, that was also my downfall in education. And so
I remember this story.
Yeah. So it was a situation where I was leaning really heavily on the empathy. I was bringing students' worries home with me. I was that teacher that the students always loved to kind of come and talk to. They needed that adult to kind of talk to, and I created that open door policy. But as I said earlier, there weren't any programs at the time that was available to me to teach me how to deal with student trauma without taking it on myself.
Yeah, vicariously.
Exactly. And I didn't know that term. I didn't know what it was. But through the deaths of 2 students, actually it was 3 because I lost one in the Maryland Department of Juvenile Services, 3 students, and then 2 suicide attempts. In that 17 years, that last student who passed away, I say broke me. It felt like I broke. And that teacher who was so empathetic and so open turned into something else. And unfortunately, I stayed a little bit too long after that happened. And then, combined with the system, the system loves to pile on those teachers who they feel are the strong teachers.
Right.
In with the air quotes, but the strong teachers, they pile on. Oh, you can take that here, take this. Oh, you can do that here, take that. And it was one of those things where it just built up. And I'm dealing with, or not dealing with, the vicarious trauma that I was sucking up until it just exploded, and I had nowhere to put it. And so I left the classroom, and on good terms. Like when I say exploded, I didn't,
No.
go
No,
into the
yeah.
and like have a meltdown. But I couldn't take anymore. And I left a job that I actually loved, but that I felt didn't love me. And so I loved being in the room with the students, but everything else I couldn't deal with. And so through therapy and through several other means, I realized what it was, and it was vicarious trauma. And so I worked through that. And I want to make sure that teachers who don't want to leave the classroom, teachers like me who love teaching, actually have supports put in place so that they don't have to go through what I went through. And so it's less about, childhood, a wise grandmother or wise teacher, and more about life experience that kind of, beat me down in order for me to learn some really hard lessons. And so now what I do is, like I said before, through my company, Sculpted Clay Productions, I go around and do professional developments to schools to kind of put those systems in place.
So this culturally responsive just journey that I've been going through, a reoccurring theme that I hear a lot is focusing directly on skills when you're talking about teaching specifically BIPOC kids or any kids. Mm-hmm. That's not how you get it, right? You have to do it in an indirect fashion, right? Like you have to, Goldie Muhammad, she talks about, helping kids understand their identity, right, in the class, and like how did that relate to your context of the class and the content, right? And then she talks about intellect, right? So we're not just learning about your content in the context of the kids, but they're learning about your content in the context of a different country, right? And it's the love for that, right? So and then she gets into criticality, right? So having a critical lens and thinking about how racism and oppression affects whatever content that you're learning, right? And then you have skills, right? So you have all of that stuff before you get into skills. And then I'm listening, like just kind of like hearing what you're saying before, I think you already kind of talked about, your worst teaching memory. So I don't want to kind of go back to that. So kind of like, leading into what you're doing now, just how did we get it wrong? Why didn't we think that just caring about kids and humans and trauma and mental health is how you actually help people learn?
You said how
did we get that wrong? Like why was that never the focus, when we are teaching teachers, right? Because it's a lot on just skills and unpacking standards and data,
That is the $1 million question. And
maybe it's intentional.
It could be very intentional, but one thing that I always remember is that our school system is relatively young. Really think about it. The school system is still pretty young, and it's like the growth of a human, right? So I feel like we're in our teen stages, and the emphasis is like we, trying to learn how to walk, trying to get systems in place. And we're at this teen stage where there's so much to learn. And there's so, we realizing how big the world is. And so we aren't necessarily focusing on the right things all the time because we're looking at what's new and shiny. And I'd like to think, and this is the optimist in me, I'd like to think that it's not by design. The optimist in me. Um, but there's a very real undercurrent in our country that is undeniable,
Yeah.
you know? And so I just feel like because, and I also feel like the research around trauma is new as well.
Right.
So as the research around trauma and its effects on humans comes out, I think now maybe that's why we're just now getting around to the actual person and not, the cogs in a machine. Because honestly, that's why the school system was developed in the first place, to create workers, to create cogs in a machine.
Right.
So why would I care about, a cog, how they're feeling? I just need them to do
work
X, Y, Z, and we'll be able to repeat that X, Y, and Z in order to make money. So yeah, and I think as we grow as a school system, that's starting to change now. Hopefully, I'm seeing in a lot of places that it is, but it's still taking too long.
Okay, so how about this? Using your testimony, what are some of your testimonies, like from your experience, from your professional development, from taking this approach, and kind of really helping teachers discover a new way?
You said what are some of the testimonials?
You don't have to give an actual testimonial, but just kind of talk on like just your experience, with working with teachers and seeing how the effects of it. You can talk about the positives and negatives and the neutrals as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that I get a lot from the teachers that I've worked with, whether it's been a one-on-one or a small group or even like a PD, a large school situation, I hear this all the time. It's like, finally, a PD for us. Like, we get these PDs where it's like, do this, that, and the third for the student. And then at the very end, they'll say, oh yeah, and practice self-care. X, Y, and Z for the student. Oh yeah, don't forget to do your self-care. And what I'm hearing a lot from them is just like, this felt, for me, this felt like I was seen by somebody who knows what I'm going through. Because there are some people out here who have never stepped into a classroom and that are giving professional developments and talks about trauma, adult trauma in education. And it's good information, but they've never been in the classroom. They don't know. And so I get that a lot. I also get that it's challenging. This is not easy. Even when we set up a personalized a routine for them, even when we sit down, and the reason why I say it's important to do a personalized, because I can tell you, Calvin, yeah, practice self-care. The things that you need to do to practice self-care: you need to meditate, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do that. Those 4 things you may not connect with, right? But I bet you if I sat down with you and we had a conversation about what fulfills you specifically, and then we look at your calendar and we find time to make that work. We find time to make sure that you are being fed as you feed others. Then that works. That works a lot better. It's still challenging though.
Right.
Challenging. And especially the biggest challenge is when your school is still operating on this cogs in the machine. Like, the students are cogs, the teachers are cogs. Get it done. We need our scores to be X, Y, and Z. And I don't care how you do it to get there. I don't care how long you got to stay at the school. I don't care. So it becomes challenging when the school is that way, which is why, again, it cannot be just self-care. It has to be things in place with the school. I just finished doing a PD last Monday with a school here in Maryland, and I was, oh my gosh, it was Charles Herbert Flowers. I'm going to shout them out on your podcast. Charles Herbert Flowers High School, and their principal, Dr. Gorman Brown, One of the things during the PD, the teachers were so like, they were singing his praises because they were saying how the leaders of the school were doing a good job of trying to put things in place already, but they just needed a little guidance. And how the teachers felt heard. I had not heard that. I had not heard that from a school. And I've been in, I don't know, probably 7 schools this school year. And I've not heard that level of kind of like thank you to the school leadership. And so if there are any school leaders that are watching, I would say either one, we need to talk, but 2, you know, when you put systems in place for your teachers for your teachers' wellness, you're going to find that it's going to have that reciprocal thing. It's going to have, you know, students' wellness increasing, their scores increasing, their positive interactions in class increasing. So. So yeah, again, it always goes back to making sure that the adults are well so they can feed into this positive cycle.
And, you know, I just think of like George Floyd, right? That was like a climactic moment that shifted the paradigm of so many people. What do you call that, you know, and how does your work, I guess, complement those type of actions? Because as soon as like George Floyd happened, everybody wants to talk about anti-racism. People want to talk about trauma-informed pedagogy, right? We want to know more, and unfortunately, you know, a brother had to be sacrificed for that to happen. You know, I mean, Malcolm X said it, right? He said he compared a powder keg to actual racial powder keg, and he was saying that a racial powder keg is by far stronger than any type of powder keg, and so they can throw any guns at us. Because you remember when George Floyd verdict was happening, how scared people was.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? And so, just kind of speak to that, and just kind of how does your work complement just moments like that, and you have to like really just take advantage so you can, you know, help change people's minds, you know?
I think it's less about taking advantage, but our culture now, we are very desensitized. We're becoming very desensitized. And the fact that at any given moment, a young person can go on the internet and watch someone die, whether it's George Floyd or literally hundreds others, you know, of others. You can literally go on our video games. I'm a huge video game head, but that even has gotten more violent, right? Our culture has gotten very violent. And then when we look at that through the lens of racial trauma, we're sitting at a time where not only do our students, but our adults are hurting to a degree that we can't ignore anymore. You know, George Floyd's execution and the subsequent months going through the trial and the verdict created I hesitate to say created an opportunity, but it really created an opportunity for us to stop and place this mirror up and say, see, this is what we've been saying is happening. See, this is what's, you know, going on in our world. And hopefully when we see that reflection, we're able to do something about it. So my work, again, really centers itself into being trauma-informed care. Again, not just for the students, but for the adults as well. How does that, watching that on TV, affect the educator?
Yeah.
Especially the educator of Black and brown children.
Right.
Especially the anti-racist teacher sitting in front of a classroom of all white students? How does that affect them? You know, what does that look like? What are we teaching? And so I want to make sure now, one of the things that kind of was like an arrow to my heart when I was teaching, Tamir Rice, the death of Tamir Rice really hit me hard. Really? And because I looked at my students, and although they were a little older, I was like, any one of these kids can be playing with a paintball outside, paintball gun, any one of them, and they can be Tamir Rice. Any one of them. And so what does that do for an educator? We don't talk about that. What does that do? You know, you talked about, you know, all the things that we need to teach them before we even get to skills.
Yeah.
How do we teach them to be Black and brown in a society that seems like is hell-bent on destroying us? As an educated Black person, as an educated, you know, Native American woman, as an educated, you know, BIPOC person, how do you do that, right? And so I want to make sure that I'm holding space for educators who are holding that bag. Because that's a heavy bag. It's heavy. It's heavy. And we don't talk about that. What does that feel like? I mean, I know what it feels like to be a mom with a Black son and a Black daughter.
Yeah.
What does it feel like to be an educator when you got 130 of them?
Yeah. Yeah. And I also lost 3 students as well to gun violence. And so definitely, I'm definitely really listening to what you're saying, and that we can't ignore it anymore. Right. I really, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So just, you know, before, you know, you talk about what do you want people to, I guess, So instead of like, what do you want people to get from the podcast? I guess like, what are some like simple tips you'll give to, you know, teachers, you know, with trauma, dealing with trauma, it just real simple, you know, tips you can give teachers.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing is journal. And I know a lot of people don't like to journal, but journaling doesn't have to be sitting down with pen and paper. Journal can be talking into your phone, into your notes section in your phone. You can't see it because it's weird.
Okay. It's okay. Yeah.
Your note section. It could be talking into your note section on your phone, just literally getting it off your chest. The act of getting it out and saying, I'm worried about, you know, Teddy. I'm worried, you know, that when they go home, what's going to happen? Instead of holding it in, getting it out in some kind of way. All right. That's one thing very simple, getting it out. I always will, I'm a proponent of therapy. Right. Not everybody is. I am a huge proponent of it, especially for Black and brown people. But there's that. But if you can't do that, then getting it off your chest. The other thing is play. Now, this sounds kind of crazy, but
I love it.
Play has so many benefits to us as adults. You know, we hit this wall of adulthood where we play differently. You know, as educators, we can see the benefits of play for young people. We see that they learn through play. We see the social benefits of play. But when we get to adulthood, we're like, I don't have time. I don't want to make time. That's childhood, you know, whatever. My big suggestion is to think about an activity that you love to do as a child. Was that hopscotch? Was that swinging on a swing? Was that, you know, playing basketball? Was that tag? Was it literally whatever it was? And generally, you notice that I'm saying active things, not
action, like right. Mm-hmm.
And then connect with that. I know there was a huge before COVID, but there was a huge not volleyball, kickball leagues were like huge in this area, adult kickball leagues. but finding some time to play. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time. Again, time is at a premium for teachers. And so literally be 10 minutes, 30 minutes. Draw a hopscotch board outside your classroom. And at the end of your lunch break, play a game of hopscotch for 10 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But play is important.
And how would you define play real briefly?
Play is anything that allows you to be joyful.
Excuse me.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be something where you're active. I think you get the most benefits when it's active. But any sort of activity that inspires joy, that is challenges you, that is social, actually. So I know I said hopscotch, and that can be a solo game. But really, when you are able to get with others socially in play, that also is a big benefit. It takes your mind off of all of the worries on your heart. You can't have fun and be worried at the same time. It doesn't happen together.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So have fun.
Find
something fun to do.
What about like Issa Rae rapping?
Issa Rae rapping?
No, like not like her rapping, but like rapping like Issa Rae. You know how she like raps to herself, like rap it to yourself. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. It that creativity, that getting that mind going, getting that flow. And I think that's the point. Just like with self-care, is finding your play. Like I can list a million things, well, not a million, but I can list so many ideas for play, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to connect with everyone. So that's why I always say, what do you like to do? What inspires joy in you? And then leaning into that. So whether that is, freestyling, creating raps, whether that is, playing spades and having, 3 friends over and, every Saturday night and having a spades party, a spades game, whether that is having a Zoom game night, right? Because we are in the middle of a pandemic. Right. We just get your friends together and have a Zoom play date. It's important. It's very important for us to play. So yeah, those are the 2 things. Get it out, either written like a journal or dictated on a device, and or therapy, which is great, and play.
Have you seen the Breakfast Club interview of Resma Menakem?
I haven't.
So it is a really good interview, and he talks about the deep roots of trauma, and the links to racism and healing practices. And as soon as you said what you just said, I thought of that. So I'm about to put the link in the chat for you.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, the Breakfast Club. I'm like, I love, hate them, but that was a really good interview. I'm sorry, that's not it. I gave you the wrong one. That's my employee website. Okay. Sorry, but. Absolutely. And playing video games, right? I play video games all the time.
What you play? What you play? What you got?
I play 2K.
That's the one thing I cannot get into sports games. I cannot.
I play 2K. Yeah, I just play 2K and Star Wars sometimes. What do you play?
Like RPGs. So my biggest thing right now is Zelda. Like I wrapped up in Zelda. I like RPGs.
Okay.
But first person shooters kind of give me a headache, so I can only play them for so long. Like,
that's trauma.
And then trauma, but I'm gonna tell you, Mortal Kombat, you don't want to see me. You do not.
I don't want to see you. I don't
want to see me on Mortal Kombat.
Don't want to see you. Don't want to see you.
Again, trauma, but you can turn the blood off on Mortal Kombat.
That's crazy, right? Remember Mortal Kombat when it was back in the day and you punch them and the blood was just looking like ketchup?
Yes. Oh, it's crazy now. So
Jesus. China, I don't know if this is correct. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but China, they made it. There was a law where they made you can't play video games on a weekday. Hold up. Let me see if this is true. video games. This might be wrong. China kids playing, yeah. China kids ban kids from playing online video game.
What? Well, I mean, hey, that makes sense. Hold on, let me pull that up.
Wait, during the week, so that's why we don't read.
Yeah.
China born under the age 18 playing on weekdays and limited their play to just 3 hours for most weekends.
I agree.
Marking a significant escalation of restrictions in the country's massive gaming industry.
Yeah.
Starting this week, minors will be allowed only an hour of playtime between 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Fridays, weekends, and public holidays.
Hey, honestly, I love video games, but I agree with this. I agree. Video
Wow.
have a tendency, and there's a lot that you can learn in video games, of course. Like there's skills that you can learn, but they also create a situation where we're not connecting with
to
people.
The world, right?
I mean, even if we are, online and we have, we're playing our PC game or, we are chatting, it's still not the same, so a lot of times kids can't read facial cues. They don't know how to read body language anymore because they're so used to either just seeing people in this box or just hearing voices, and so it's causing an issue. So I agree. Yeah.
So you don't think humans are cyborgs?
Not yet.
But we're becoming pretty much cyborgs, literally. But cool. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, how'd you feel? You say you will be.
Hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. I started playing the interview by mistake.
Oh no, it's all good. It's all good. Oh, you got it. Perfect. Now I want you to definitely listen to it. It's a really good interview. Now, but what you think of the podcast? Hopefully, you really was vibing to it and stuff.
Yes.
A lot of I know. Definitely appreciate just the connection, with DMV to Norfolk to the South and stuff. And thank you so much for just doing the work that you do. We actually just got a trauma-informed facilitator at our school. She was our current previous English teacher, and now she's like pretty much our trauma coach or the person the kids go to. And the first day, like, already giving me things that I need to make sure that I help this kid out of my class, and it's just like I need this, like I've been needing this for so long, and so thank you all for the work that you do. I remember when I was in high school, I would always go to my counselor because I was dealing with a lot of mental issues with just basketball, college, and everything. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. And I'm glad you said that. And I want to shout out all those teachers who are that teacher. Mr. Jesse Dickens was that for me, in high school, that teacher who I could come to and who would listen to me and not judge and help me through a lot of family stuff and a lot of, trouble. So, shout out to those teachers who are that person for these students. And again, just make sure you're taking care of yourself, because you cannot continue to be that person if you take on and don't have anywhere to put it and don't know how to process that. Because again, the challenge is avoiding vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue as we are dealing with students who are going through trauma, and as we are going through a whole worldwide pandemic and dealing with our own traumas. So just take care of yourself, man. Take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thank you for just giving us simplicity and everything. You definitely been giving a lot of jewels, and we really appreciate just you really giving us, just your honesty and your love and your family oriented mindset. So anything you want people to get from the podcast before you go real quickly?
No, just if they are having trouble or they want some help with putting systems in place, whether it's personal systems or systems in their educational environment, by all means they can reach out to me. Ayesis at sculptedclayproductions.com. Again, it's that
Yes.
Ayesis at sculptedclayproductions.com. And the website is www.sculptedclayproductions.com. I do want to say this too. One of the things that sets me apart, because my experience, my way in is always through the arts. So all of my residencies, all of my professional development, they have an arts theme, if you will. So my professional development on secondary traumatic stress and dealing with that in educational environments starts with an actual one-woman play that shows the descent of an educator dealing with secondary traumatic stress so that teachers can see what it looks like. Because a lot of times just having the data, it's great, but it's difficult to make the jump from data to how it really looks in themselves as well as their colleagues. And so it starts with that. Again, theater is my jam. So and the arts really have they really can transform. So yeah.
Could you give us a quick synopsis of the play right here?
Sure. It actually is a solo show. It's my story about a young person, right straight out of college, who fighting tooth and nail to not be a teacher, and then coming up against these systems that are not really conducive to the emotional supports that both she and the students need, dealing with burnout, but then also dealing with secondary traumatic stress and death. I do think that when students and colleagues unfortunately die when we have them that situation in schools, what generally happens is a school leader will come on the intercom and they will say, grief counselors will be in the building for anyone who wants them. And that's it, right? And then the teacher is like, okay, so when am I supposed to see the grief counselor? Matter of fact, it's also kind of put that way, like for the students. Grief counselors, are there for the students. So, if a student needs help, then send them to Mrs. Williams' office. But we don't talk about what that feels like, as an educator. And so it shows that, but it also ends on hope, that there's hope out of that and what that looks like. To continue on as an educator within a flawed system. And so that leads to conversations about, the educators in the space, what have been their experiences and how can we put things in place? And I have ideas. And so I, offer ideas and work with school leadership to do that.
Thank you so much, Ayesis, for giving us simplicity. Thank you so much for blessing the podcast. This has been a really, really dope conversation. And I hope, you have a great, amazing year. I'm sure you're going to be getting a lot of consultations. So please just, continue doing what you're doing. And I know your people are proud of you.
Thank you. This has been so awesome.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. Thank you. All right.